So, you want to build an actual software startup. You've seen these posts and videos online of people saying how easy this has become with AI.
Today we're going to talk about how to use AI to build a SaaS in a weekend.
Vibe coding is the biggest opportunity of our lifetime.
Now I can just go back and forth with Lovable.
I've never written a line of code in my life. I'm not a designer. I'm just going to do whatever feels right, whatever sounds fun.
So how hard can it be? You're motivated, you dive in, try out every AI tool out there, you build, you ship, you can't wait to hit those 10K MRR. And then at some point you realize it's still pretty hard. I know because I'm actually doing this, full-time trying to build a scalable, sustainable software business from zero. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how. The tools, workflows and tech stack I use, the full reality of it. I'll give you some tips on how you can get started yourself. And also I share my biggest learnings from those past weeks with you, because it turns out building is by far not the most important part, and understanding this early can save you a lot of time. Before we dive into the building process, here's a quick life update, because last time you saw me I was in Taiwan and a lot has happened since then. Since roughly 3 years now I've been living quite nomadic, always staying around 2 to 5 months in one place and then moving on to the next. To me this feels like the sweet spot between routine and stability on the one hand, and the excitement of change that keeps life fresh and avoids stagnation on the other. And I've learned to not really plan ahead much, because there's always stuff coming up somehow, so I just go with the flow. And once again, this was holding true. A week before leaving Taiwan, I got a message from Bela, a guy I met in San Francisco last year. He's now organizing hackathons and one of the biggest and coolest tech communities in Europe. And he said that he was starting a builder space in Berlin and asked me if I want to join. That sounded just like the right opportunity, because sitting alone in my apartment can get quite straining over time. And after those 2 months, I was really craving connection. Between Taiwan and Berlin, I spent 2 weeks at home with my parents, where I wasn't that productive, to be honest. I just enjoyed life with family and friends, went to a couple of concerts, and also finally got other stuff done that I was delaying for way too long, like getting my wisdom teeth removed. But then it was time to move. Berlin was calling. I've been doing this quite often now, throwing myself into new environments, and still there's always this initial resistance. Your body and mind refuse at first. They want to stay in comfort. They want to stay in the known. But I've learned you just need to push through that day of transition, and then you adapt surprisingly fast.
Komm aus dem Club, war schön gewesen, stinke nach Suff, bin kaputt, ist ein schönes Leben.
The program I joined is called The Sandbox. We're 10 early stage founders, each working on their own project, but alongside each other in our co-working space.
What we want to create here is an environment for ambition. I think in Europe there are not enough spaces where people who want to create a new thing can come together and work together. I think in San Francisco you walk across the street and you meet a lot of ambitious people and get a lot of inspiration in your daily work. I think here you really have to search for those people, and I deeply believe that they exist in the majority of European ecosystems, but that they're just very distributed. And 5 to 10 of those people around you every day is enough to raise your ceiling by a lot. And beyond that, the marginal value of those interactions, I would say, decreases rapidly. So I think if we create those ecosystems and this places inside those ecosystems, where it's just about like through working together at the same place, raising the ceiling for all of the people inside. And yeah, that's what we try to do. That's what we try to build here.
So I can highly encourage you to choose your environment deliberately and actively search for the right people to surround yourself with. As Bela said, 5 to 10 people is enough. Just find a room and start grinding together. That can have a massive positive impact on your well-being, productivity, and ambition. Welcome to the co-working space. This building is still under construction, and the floor that we are in just got opened last week. So everything is brand new, and it's also not that full because not many people moved in yet. And today is especially empty. I think I'm the only one here because it's Sunday and work doesn't really align with European work ethic. This here is our dedicated room. We even got t-shirts. Very nice. Okay, let me show you what I've been working on. These past days, on the one hand, were all about settling into my new life in Berlin. And on the other hand, it was about starting to build the actual product for public. And of course, before you start building, you need to have a clear plan on what you want to build. In the past weeks, I talked to a lot of people to get more clarity on this. On the one hand, I talked with people that fit into my ideal customer profile to learn more about what they need from a tool like this. And on the other hand, I talked to a lot of people from the industry, either consultants in the personal branding marketing space or people who are building their own tools to understand more how they're thinking about this problem space and what their learnings were so far. And combining that with my own personal experience from the past month really helped me come up with a clear idea for the first version of this product in my head. But of course, there's a big difference between having this idea in your head versus having it mapped out in front of you, so that I really understand it better, have more clarity, others understand it better, and AI understands it better. So this is what I started with. First, together with Claude, I worked on a PRD for public, so a product requirements document that really defines all the features that the first version of the product should have. It also clarifies the target audience, the user journey, the business side of things, to really have the whole flow, the whole essence of the product in one place. And I added this PRD as a markdown file in Cursor, so it can always be referenced and updated. So not only me, but also the AI coding agents always have up-to-date information on what this product is about. And this really saves time because you can always give it the context in just one tag and don't have to repeat yourself. It helps avoid hallucinations, it helps avoid breaking something, and it helps avoid coming up with unnecessary features that are not part of the core product requirement. I then got more concrete and worked on the first big feature, the onboarding flow. I started with Figma, but to be honest, I realized that this is probably a waste of time because the front-end side of things is so easy to just directly generate with AI. And the challenge was more to come up with the technical logic behind it and also the exact content of it. So after having like a rough overview of the first pages, I switched to Notion and wrote it down in text form and really clarified each step of the onboarding flow. And then again, I used Claude to really come up with an exact plan for the feature. While the product requirements document is more the high-level overview of the whole product, it really helps to have a plan for each feature that you're going to build that you can always reference to, and you and your AI coding agent work through it together and both have the same context. Those AI coding agents are so powerful that the actual execution is not the bottleneck anymore in most cases. The bottleneck is the context and the planning beforehand. So it really makes sense to pour a lot of time, energy, and thinking into this initial planning phase beforehand. This is the evolution of vibe coding. While in the beginning, everyone was just like yapping, typing prompts, and trying to one-shot it. Over time, people realized, hey, it makes a lot more sense to engineer the context. So people speak of context engineering. That's the real art form behind it. So you're not just vibing, but you're actually putting a bit more thought into the whole thinking process behind it. In the past weeks, many fancy frameworks emerged on GitHub where people came up with ways to structure this context engineering side. And I looked into that and tried many different approaches. And to be honest, I felt that this is over-engineered. Sure, you need to have some kind of process that you can follow, but in most cases it's too much and you need to have some kind of flexibility depending on how things are going when you're building with AI. So I kept it simple. I have this overall PRD, and then for each feature I make a plan, and I have a Claude command that defines how this plan should look like. And then I have one extra Claude sub-agent that reviews whether the execution actually followed the plan. And that's it. And so far it's been working very well. Okay, so we were just eating in peace, and then some random guy walked past us and dropped his cards. And I first thought it was like for Volt, the delivery service, like some discount or something. It turns out it's like a drug advertisement. Hey. Welcome to Berlin.
Homer hanging on my neck. The bracelet matches a set. My brother name is Tina Dollar. Stop all that back and forth over the net. My mama wish I would have went corporate. She wish I would have went.
Okay, let me show you the actual tools and tech stack that I'm using to build this. As you've already seen, I use Cursor as my development environment, and instead of the Cursor AI, I use Claude Code. Why do I use Claude Code? I feel Claude Code is better. Many other people also feel the same way. I also highly recommend you to use MCPs with your coding agent. They work with Cursor, with Windsurf, and also Claude Code, of course. And those MCPs just help the coding agent to get the necessary context to actually perform the tasks in the most efficient and best way possible. My favorite MCPs right now are the Perplexity MCP to do web research, the Supabase MCP to understand the database structure and directly do changes in the database, and the Context7 MCP to always have up-to-date documentation. As the coding framework I'm building with Next.js, that's just the standard in modern web development by now. So many tools work on top of it, and also AI coding agents are really good with it. I already mentioned it, Supabase, that's what I use for, on the one hand, user authentication, and on the other hand, for the database. It's really easy, also pretty much a standard by now, and integrates with a lot of tools. And for someone that is not the craziest database expert, it's kind of nice to work with. For deployment, so getting the app actually up and running in the internet, I use Vercel. Vercel is basically an AWS wrapper, but a really good one, and it makes deployment so much easier without any headache. It directly integrates with GitHub, and within one click you have the app up and running. So for getting started, I can highly recommend you to use Vercel. But here comes the thing. I'm not building the whole app like this. A pretty big chunk of the product is actually built in N8N. N8N is a visual automation builder, in my opinion, the best one out there. And I use it for everything back-end automation related. Why do I do this? First of all, because especially in the beginning, it's a lot about iterating fast and experimenting. And if you code your whole back-end logic and infrastructure, it's really hard, especially if you're not the most cracked technical person, it's really hard to make small changes and still get a good feeling and overview of what's actually happening. And I want this feeling, this control, this overview. And I also want to be able to iterate and experiment fast. And with this node-based workflow, it's just so easy to switch models, switch prompts, switch data flows, switch agentic workflows. So in my opinion, there's no better way than this to build the initial version. Of course, you can't scale endlessly with this. At some point, it makes sense to build the infrastructure fully in code and own everything and not be dependent on N8N. But I think you can scale this pretty far. Yeah, I can highly recommend you to have a look into N8N, even if you're technical and used to code all day. In my opinion, that's the best way to get from 0 to 1 fast, without drowning in complexity and still maintaining very granular control. The way I connect N8N with the Next.js project is via a webhook. You could have multiple webhooks for each workflow, but that can get chaotic very quickly. So I'm using a single webhook and then a switcher that then directs it to the correct workflow depending on the identifier that gets sent with the webhook request. And also N8N and the Next.js project are both connected to the same Supabase database. So this way they also always have the same context and can both read and write into the database. Yeah, that was a quick overview. I can also display the full tech stack here for you as reference. And I would also be very curious if you're building what you're building with. So maybe I get inspired too and learn a thing or two. So feel free to let me know in the comments what you use and why it's better than mine. And another tip, make use of grants. Especially if you're building in the AI space, the model consumption can get quite expensive quickly. But luckily, many of those model and service providers have grants for early stage startups. So they get a certain sum of token or model or usage consumption for free, or get the pro service for free for a couple of months. That's a great opportunity to get started building without already having to worry about all the costs. Of course, you shouldn't neglect the costs. Only because you have the grants now doesn't mean you will have the grants forever. So already think about profitability and the unit economics of what you're building when you start out. And of course, you shouldn't use a tool only because it has a free grant. Already think about, okay, what is the best solution for me? And if they have a grant, yeah, sure, go for it. If there's an alternative solution that is equally good with a grant, then go for that one. But don't just choose a model provider or a tool just because I have a free grant. I think that's also dumb. But yeah, when everything matches, it's just the obvious choice to try that. I, for example, just got the 11Labs grant, which is like, I think $4,000 to $5,000 in credits. And through the Sandbox program, I graciously got 1.5K in credits for OpenAI. Yeah, so I can highly recommend you check out what opportunities are there for you. There are directories. Most platforms just directly have an application form on their website, and hackathons are also a great way to get credits. Yeah, just keep grants in mind when you're building.
Close face, trying to find this race, man. It's trying to leave out in my take, right? I need to start this shit, I need to start them just off safe, like, pick the smell out, oh, now it's packing and it might pay. Like, water turn me up, yeah, ich glaub, das wird es take sein. Steine auf mein Bett, Dr. B auf meiner Waistline. Fick auf deinen Hate, ich bin Hip-Hop so wie 8 Mile. Komm nicht aus LA, meine Niggas machen.
I just had a call with Joe. Joe is the founder of Floodify. Floodify is a tool that automates TikTok content for musicians. So it's kind of in a similar niche as Public. And he's already pretty successful with it. He just crossed 80k MRR last month and is growing rapidly. And also he has gone through a similar journey. Like, he first solved his own problem. He then sold it as an agency and then started to productize it and actually build a SaaS out of it. So yeah, I wanted to learn more about his journey and get some tips and challenge some ideas with him. And one thing that became really clear is that you need to monetize as fast as possible. He said it like, sell the demand, sell the dream first and then build later. And I kind of knew that already, but there's such a big difference between knowing something and actually understanding something and acting on it. And again, I felt trap of thinking, hey, I need to build like a proper MVP first and then get it into the hands of some people and wait for the feedback. I think Joe is right. That's probably not the right approach anymore. And the building part is not the bottleneck in many cases. And he also encouraged me to go down the productized service agency route first before actually building an autonomous product, start selling it as a service and work closely with the first customers, do things that don't scale, and then slowly transition into the product. Yeah, that got me thinking. Because when you're building intensely, like I did in the last days, it's very easy to lose sight of the big picture. Like, you hop from one problem to the next, you implement new features, you get excited about it, you're deep in flow state, only thinking about the technical implementation. But you don't zoom out and actually think, is this the best way to spend my time right now? And if you haven't validated your solution, validated meaning your ICP is willing to pay good money for it, then it's probably not the best way to spend this time. And going down more the do things don't scale agency route maybe makes more sense. So what I'm going to do moving forward is that I'm going to finish the onboarding process. I think having that as an autonomous solution makes a lot of sense, either way, for a product as well as for an agency. And then I'm going to reach out to the first people off the waitlist, hop into calls and try to sell them something. I mean, I have the automations already. I just haven't plugged them together in a product that just works in a beautiful interface. But I think that's fine. And then we'll go on from there and I'll build in the background. So takeaways for you. A, reach out to people who are on a similar path, but a few steps ahead of you. That can be extremely valuable. And most people are super willing to help if you ask them in a friendly, personalized way and have a clear ask of what they can help you with. And second, don't get lost building. Think of the big picture. And if you want to build a business and not a product.
He needs LinkedIn.
Alright, let me show you what I've been actually building. My overall vision with Public is to create the distribution engine for founders. Because right now, very often, not the entrepreneurs with the best offering are winning, but the ones who are the loudest and who are the best at distributing. And very often, technical builders who spend a lot of time thinking about product have a hard time thinking about distribution. And my goal is to level the playing field so that not the loudest people are winning, but the entrepreneurs who actually have the best offering, and provide them with an easy way to match this offering with their target customer and the people who can profit from it the most. I believe personal branding is a very powerful ingredient for this because people like to trust people, not faceless companies. And at a time where it's increasingly harder to make other distribution channels work, like cold outreach, paid ads, or influencer marketing, having this personal brand asset that you own, that you build up over time and that stays with you, can just outperform all the other channels. But for this, you need to have a clear strategy on how to get started. You need to have a content engine running that creates content that performs well, that achieves your goals, and that also sounds like you and is authentic to make people connect with you. But then once you have the strategy and content engine foundation, you also need a way to leverage the awareness, reach you create. And for this, I think outreach can still be very valuable, but not completely cold outreach, but rather warmed up outreach, where you look at the signals from people interacting with your content. You analyze them, you see, okay, who fits my ICP profile, who interacts in what way, and then you use those signals to create a very personalized outreach based on what that person needs, and that person already knows you through your content, so the likelihood of conversion is much higher. This is what I want to build, this overall engine. But of course, that's very complex and includes many different problem fields and spaces. So you can't really do it all at once if you want to achieve a certain quality standard, but it's all about baby steps. So we have those 3 pillars: strategy, onboarding, content engine, and outreach. And I started with building the strategy onboarding because from my experience, this was the biggest bottleneck with founders who didn't have any touch point with personal branding before. They lacked the confidence in it and they lacked the clarity on how they can position themselves, how this content strategy might look like. I want to make it as easy and frictionless as possible for them to come up with this clarity, especially if you don't have much time and you don't have the willingness to dive deeper into the personal branding topic yourself and you don't have much expertise in it. And yeah, this is what I came up with. You sign in with your LinkedIn account. Then you can also optionally add the website of your company for additional context. Then you adjust those sliders depending on the style of context you want to go for. I don't want any emojis. I want to be rather casual and I want to focus more on my personal journey. And now in the background, it's using the information provided, your website and your LinkedIn, to gather as much context as possible about you, to already have a first understanding of who you are and what your goals are with personal branding. We see, okay, now the process just finished, and then I get thrown into a conversation.
Hey, Leon, welcome to Public. By the end of this conversation, we'll have a clear picture of how to make LinkedIn work for your goals. Ready to get started? Tell me a bit about what brought you to think about personal branding right now.
Well, I just started to understand the importance of it. I want to create a reliable and sustainable way to reach the people I like to reach and create distribution for my startup.
That's great to hear, Leon. It sounds like you're looking to build a personal brand that not only reaches your target audience, but also drives growth for Public. I see that you're targeting both younger individuals seeking guidance in the age of AI and the venture-backed B2B tech founders. That's quite a wide range. Do you find yourself tailoring your content differently for these 2 groups, or is there a common thread that ties it all together?
Okay, I'm gonna end it here. 2 minutes is the minimum I set for now, but of course you can have the conversation much longer. The more context you give, the better it gets. And as you saw, it's not just some random basic interview questions, but the voice agent already knows you. And now we see, okay, based on the conversation, based on all the other information provided, here you have a pre-filled version of your, I call it public persona, your personal brand strategy. So you don't have to start from zero, you don't have to stare at a blank page, but within a few minutes, you directly get the 9 most important pillars figured out for you. You can have a look at it, you can make changes if you like, but it just really helps to get started and feel confident with it. This is the interface part that I built, but of course the biggest challenge was to build all the backend logic, because in the end, to create great content that performs, that converts, that is authentic, it's all about context engineering. You need to have as much context as possible. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how can I implement this? How can I gather all the information? How can I move the information from the voice agent to like a long-term storage to the content creation agent? So I set up the whole infrastructure, and as a first interface, I built this onboarding flow. Yeah, this is the starting point. And of course, this is just the first pillar. But I figured before already building the content engine part in the product, I want to work closer with first pilot customers to really make sure what I built is what they need. I already have most of the automations figured out. I use them myself, but there's a different thing between using them myself and also making them work for others and then putting them in a product that works. So before I directly tackle this challenge, I wanted to take a step in between. So I'm offering a pilot program, which is more like a productized service for a select amount of B2B founders who are interested in working with me, who are interested in trying out Public, and who are interested in developing the product with me. So if you're a B2B founder interested in personal branding, you understand the importance of it, but you don't have the time or knowledge to get started yourself, and you also don't want to work with an expensive agency that charges 5 to 10K a month, then feel free to reach out, check the link in the description. There's more information about it. And yeah, maybe we can work together. Okay, first user testing. I got some very positive and most importantly, very helpful critical feedback in those initial user testings. And now it's all about sales and getting those first pilots onboarded. This will be the main focus of the next episode, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it. To wrap up this video, I would like to summarize my main learnings when it comes to building software products in the age of AI. and then give you some concrete tips on how to get started yourself. First, building is so much fun. Yes, it can also be very frustrating, but overall it excites me. Being in flow state, solving hard problems, creating something new, it's just very cool. And sure, I'm not the best developer and my tech stack and infrastructure isn't ready to serve 1 billion users at the same time. But for my case it works, and with AI by my side, I feel very confident doing it. But the most important thing to understand is second, AI doesn't make building that much easier. It certainly helps and it empowers you, but it's still incredibly hard. AI is not that smart that it can do everything for you. That's a big vibe coding misconception. And it often comes from people who never really tried to build something properly themselves. Sure, you can throw up a pretty landing page with some basic functionality in under half an hour, but it's still very far from building something that actually provides real value to real users. Problems are obvious. There are millions of them out there. What you need to validate is your solution. And something you vibe coded in 30 minutes is probably not the solution. And if it is, congrats, then you have 0 product mode and you need to think extra hard about distribution. Building is always painful. We had some very interesting conversations about that with the group, and it was good to hear that others made similar experiences. AI might speed up some things and help less technical people get started, but don't expect it won't be hard. So there really is a big gap at the moment between what's propagated online around vibe coding and what's the reality. You still need to have a proper technical understanding, database principles, how to work with APIs, etc. Without that, you're fucked because AI coding agents are still very much reliant on your guidance. I'm not saying this to demotivate you. I'm saying this with my best intentions in mind to help you manage your expectations. The good news is, with AI by your side, there has never been a better time to learn software development. But you cannot expect to just vibe all the time. You need to stay alert, constantly curious, and be willing to put in the extra work and research to understand what you're doing. To get started, I can highly recommend you to watch this video by Ben AI. There he perfectly summarized the different levels of building software products nowadays and combined that with great insight on the business side of things. And the final learning of this video, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. And in the end, it's about your environment and the people you surround yourself with to be able to persist. That's what makes the difference and helps you push through, dream bigger, stay consistent. Sure, AI helps, the internet helps, but nothing comes close to the right physical environment. So thank you, Bela, for creating this environment in Europe. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching and see you in episode 5.
Boy, I've forgotten how much work it actually is to start a company. It's a lot of work. And you've got to do everything. You've got to come up with a name. You've got to come up with a logo. In addition to designing the product, you've got to figure out what to design. You've got to figure out how you're going to get it to the marketplace. You've got to do a part number system. You've got to go get bank accounts. You've got to set up charts, general ledgers, get a management information system, get a little kitchen set up, get a coffee maker, all this stuff.